Okay, I'd like to call the regular meeting to order. And could we have roll call, please?
Chairman Beniak.
Here.
Legislator Duchessis.
Here.
Legislator Wheeler. Legislator Isabel.
Here.
Legislator Patel.
Present.
Legislator Kelly.
Present.
Legislator Quackenbush. Legislator Diamond.
Here.
Legislator Whites.
Present.
Okay. Please stand to salute the flag, and would Legislator Isabel lead us in the pledge, please?
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. Any public comment? Here are none. I'll move on to a very special guest we have. We have Congressman Paul Tonko here, and I asked the Congressman here just to give us a brief update on what he's been working on. You have the floor, Congressman.
Thank you, Chairman. First, let me begin by saying thank you, fellow legislators, for the opportunity to network with you this evening. And this does take me back several decades. It was 1976, January of 76, when I was sworn in to sit in one of these seats to represent the city of Amsterdam, a portion of it on the county board, and a great learning curve for me, and an opportunity to serve Montgomery County and get the sense that there's a noble with small n opportunity to serve the general public, and that we can move those grains of sand and make a difference. So I just valued the experience I gained here, and it's a treasure to be here this evening and kind of relive that moment time and time again as I do, but nothing more powerful than coming into the actual chamber. Dan Peluso is with me from our office. Dan works in our Albany office and does a lot of our scheduling work and some reinforcement work, and I can tell you it's a very busy day every day in the 20th Congressional District. So I thank Dan for his assistance and for his work across the board for everyone in the Congressional District. Let me begin by telling you that I think it's so important these days for all levels of government to be working in unison with the private sector, with academia. It's good to see our community college president here. And thank you, Dusty, for the leadership you provide, that you have for your leadership as county exec. Wondering where you went with that here. But by working together, I think there are great things we can accomplish. And we're in the midst of an innovation economy, which is incredibly important. And I believe that ripple effect here locally of an innovation economy is going to reach out further and further with time. We have somewhat of a connection with Malta in this congressional district, over to Troy and Albany with nanotech, chip manufacturing, of course, in Malta, and then the work that the state legislature and Governor Cuomo have done with Marcy to our west. And we're within that captive zone that enables us to work toward an opportunity to grow that innovation economy here in the capital region. The many think tanks that are national in scope and some international, and I would include in that also the Department of Energy, the Federal Department of Energy, have dubbed our region, the greater capital region, and primarily this congressional district, as one of the 5 hottest bits of geography in the country for green collar, innovation, high-tech job growth that enables us. Hey, John, how are you doing? Now, this is a familiar scene. I mean, all right. So, but anyhow, they have dubbed us as one of the 5 hottest bits of real estate in the country for that sort of innovation economy from an energy/environmental perspective. And That requires us, I think, to invest in the physical capital and human infrastructure that enables us to continue to build upon that underpinning of a foundation that enabled us to have like the largest chip manufacturing effort in the country, in the world, actually, and to have the nanotech campus and technical campuses like that of RPI, producing the science and tech-driven career types, and our community colleges that reinforce with clean room activity the work that's needed to be done. R&D Center in Niskayuna, and certainly the efforts with renewables, the International Renewable Center at GE's headquarters in Schenectady. As a sidelight, let me just share an opinion. I don't know it to be fact, but when the governor and the legislature could not resolve the redistricting issue the last go around, I'm convinced that when it was punted to the judicial branch, the judge, as she looked at the map and tried to develop, I think the challenge, the charge to redistricting has always been in its purest sense to find those areas of homogeneity. And I think it was the high-tech innovation economy that she saw as a cluster zone. And it's why Malta and Albany and Troy and Niskayuna and Schenectady were brought into a common turf of the 20th Congressional District, all because it's driven by that high-tech research innovation element. And so I think that speaks to us forcefully as a way to grow maybe the main axis of our regional economy. That doesn't mean to suggest, I don't mean to suggest that that's the only opportunity for job growth and expansion in the region, but I think it's our primary axis. And because of my background and because of my work on energy and environmental issues when I was in the State Assembly, I sought to get a seat on the Energy and Commerce Committee, which I now have, and on Science and Tech. And those are just like hand in glove fit for being at the committee table to debate and advocate for the sorts of program dollars and resources that will add to our thematics here in this region. I'm now the ranker on a subcommittee dubbed Environment and the Economy, and it's there that we do a lot of work that relates to the industries and the specific companies and dynamics that I mentioned. The need nationally, I think, in a large sense for economic growth is that of infrastructure. It took us a while to do the FAST legislation, which was the traditional transportation piece, airports, roads, bridges, ports, subways, canal systems. It's not as grand a program as I think we should have. It's a start. There's a lot of backburnering that was done over the years of contentious discussion between the houses, between the U.S. Senate and the House. But eventually that fast track thing came about, and we got it done. But there's more work to be done. But what was not addressed is what I call the hidden infrastructure, the drinking water, water sewer issues that challenge all of us. So when I got my rankership on environment and the economy, I understood right there that the Clean Drinking Water Act fell under the tutelage of that subcommittee. So I thought that would be a really important piece to look at, to delve into that work as a subcommittee ranker. I had mentioned it to the chair of the subcommittee as the ranker. Representative Shimkus is from Illinois. And he said, well, let's move with a small piece first. We did a rural piece that I think spoke to about $12 million for technical training for rural systems and small systems, but that's a drop in the ocean for what we need to do. And so about 2 years ago, we began tours as to the state of repair or disrepair or need of our water infrastructure in this congressional district. And we found situations that included 145-year-old pipes, wood pipes. The 145-year-old pipes obviously would take you back to the days of Rutherford B. Hayes in the White House. Discontinued inventory, depleted inventory, where some parts were required that were no longer manufactured. So you had to do some sort of innovative, inventive thing to keep systems going. Huge bit of calcification and clogging of systems so that 8-inch pipes might be rendered to be a 4-inch capacity. Corrosion from the outside, the acidity of soils was wearing them down with time. And also a surprising factor that came to our attention was a depleted human infrastructure. Because there was a lack of focus on the overall system, I believe it did not encourage or perhaps discourage the development of career types, career paths for operations and maintenance sake of these systems. So we began to wordsmith out from the tours what we thought needed to be done in legislation. And just about when we got the drafting done, Flint, Michigan happened. And we all know that story, and it really promoted the issue of the state of our water infrastructure. Became front page, top of the page headlines. And it shows you what happens when government, starting with the federal government, tries to short circuit and avoid investment, so families were encouraged to utilize their systems after they transferred the source of their water supply to Flint, Michigan. And the impact was lead-contaminated pipes that were feeding homes that were deemed very dangerous to especially children. And so it became a very pronounced issue. And then Hoosick Falls happened in our backyard with the carcinogens that were in that water supply. And you've got Crystal City, Texas, and Cleveland, Ohio, and a number of places that are starting to come to the forefront as communities in need. And it's only going to grow, I believe, because now the exercise is to examine which systems have lead pipes, school systems that might be served by lead-contaminated pipes. And I believe there are a number that were grandfathered into the system. I think it was around 1976 when they were no longer allowed, but there are still many in the system. And when we explored the issue nationally with various statistics that we were able to gather, you find that 7 billion gallons of water a day is lost through leaking pipes. Engineers would tell you that a factor of 10 should be used to address the issue, so that if you can insert a system, which you can with gauging and testing innovation, if you address some of these issues before they actually break down, it's 1/10 the cost of doing it. Then waiting till that system breaks down, and you're going to pay more, much more, 10 times more for that system. So our SRF, the State Revolving Fund, which is the mechanism by which Washington sends, the federal government sends money to the individual states, hasn't been reauthorized in 20 years. 1996 was the last time we reauthorized. Sitting in the seats that you occupy, I can clearly remember a much more lucrative flow, a revenue stream from Washington that was much more powerful for maintaining our systems and upgrading them. About 4% is the running average of contribution from the federal government. Far too weak, in my opinion. What doesn't get done there gets transferred to the states. What doesn't get done there transfers to the counties and the local communities. And so we reauthorize the SRF and we enhance it. I would like to go further, but in order to try and get bipartisan support, bicameral support for the effort, we started with the President's stimulus plan that you'll recall came about in 2009 when in the very first moments of the President's tenure in office, he was facing an 800,000 job loss count in each month of the very first months of his presidency. And so they invested as an administration with the support of Congress in a stimulus act that included dollars for water infrastructure. And we took those dollars, which were far more applied for than dollars would allow. We used that as a starting point. It was a $2.89 billion approach. We took inflation and spiraled it up to $3.1 billion. That's our starting point, and then we add 15% per year. It's a 5-year plan of reauthorization, and it takes you to about 21 to 22 billion. It's a lot of money, but it pales in comparison to what the need is. Engineering estimates are that over the next 20 years, we need about $384 billion to bring the system nationally into full play. But I will contrast what we're doing, the 21 billion, compares to 980 million that's in the trust fund now. And ironically, when asked by the engineers serving Flint what the price tag would be to fix Flint, it's about $1 billion. So the entire national fund could go to fix Flint, Michigan. That's how weakly funded it is. So we're making it our fight to push AQUA, which is the Assistance, Quality, and Affordability Act, acronym out to AQUA. It's HR 4653. It's a 5-year reauthorization. That again is $21 to $22 billion worth that would go to the SRFs, the state revolving funds. And there's also a new piece that we add at $100 million a year, so $500 million for lead contamination, lead-contaminated pipe replacement. But this at least allows for communities to do more than just operate and maintain. Many of the water systems that we've talked to by surveying around the country through the subcommittee have said that they're at a stress point. People can't take much more, their water rates, and that amount of money that they're raising at times isn't even enough to operate and maintain a system, nonetheless upgrade it. So there has to be an investment made here to avoid further costs, to avoid those 7 billion gallons of leakage a day from leaky pipes, to avoid the breakdown of systems that are going to cost us 10 times more than if we had jumped in with a preventive sort of mindset. So that is a big effort that we're trying to make. I can tell you, some folks looked at it from committee. It's a great idea, too costly. I quite aggressively keep asking my colleagues, what has value enough for you to invest in these days? Because I'll talk about a couple of programs and everything comes down to, if it has a price tag, we're not doing it. And you can't keep pushing the cost of public resources out into the future because it's just foolishness. You keep paying more by doing so. So that's our effort with infrastructure. We'll continue to work on roads and bridges for a second round of activity because I think for public safety's sake and for commerce sake, we need to do that. And you need to have sound infrastructure to make it happen. By the way, when we unveiled our program locally in the district, we did it at a distillery, and they use 50,000 gallons per month in Clifton Park at their distillery. And they pointed to the fact that every industry in that park, every business in that park there's a reliance on sound water for their operations, either as an ingredient in their product or as a commodity that they need to make the systems work. So I think it's not a stretch to say that water is part of every life and it's part of every job. And so if we can do a sound bit of drinking water and reauthorize the Drinking Water Act, I think we can at least know that we're assisting with job growth and job retention and quality of life for the people that we mutually serve. The other point that I would make mention of is the opiate situation, which is grown to epidemic proportions. I think we know of individuals in our own backyards that have been impacted by this. Every weekend that I'm home from Washington, it gets rather torturous to hear from firefighters and EMS folks that they lost another individual. And it's happening in every neighborhood of all types. It knows no boundaries. And, not to point any fingers of blame, but we became dependent on opiates being, the go-to as a pharmaceutical dispense to deal with pain management. And over the last decade or so, that reliance has turned us into a really difficult, complicated issue. And to address that, I believe we need to see addiction as an illness that it is, and address it as such. I put together with a fellow Republican, actually an MD, Representative Bouchon, to put together an opiate response plan. And one of the efforts that I'm co-chair of the addiction caucus in our house, and one of the items that we found essential was that there's currently a cap, an artificial cap, on the medical community for how much buprenorphine, for instance, they can administer, or how many people can administer, correctly said. So MDs are capped at 100 patients. When I met with addicts, they told me that they had traveled for months looking for service that could be provided by an MD, but everyone's at their cap. And so I would have liked to raise it more than 250, but we had to, for sake of compromise, settle for 250. We put a bill together, Representative Bouchon and myself, that lifted the cap from 100 to 250 for individual MDs. And we added to that community of MDs, physician assistants and nurse practitioners with the appropriate training and certification. Now, obviously, that's going to cost money. You know, you don't raise the cap and enhance the community that can deliver the service and expect that it's a status quo outcome. So I visited again with the addict community, and they felt that there was hope at the end of the tunnel for that kind of legislation, that would come with that kind of legislation. I found days after meeting with them that they wanted to gut the bill in Washington. Actually, I was told on my way back in transit to DC. And again, it was a price tag that they wanted to avoid. I don't know how we resolve infrastructure crises and, you know, an epidemic crisis by just telling the world we care. And so they were going to settle for window dressing. You know, we'll have the whole program, we'll have the concept of raising the caps and increasing the audience of service providers, but gut the resources in the bill. And I had to make a decision whether to stay on the bill as the co-sponsor or get off the bill. I stayed on the bill, kind of begrudgingly, but it was the only way to maintain a seat at the negotiating table. And we're in the midst of trying to resolve that. But it angers me that as we try to address individuals and their illness of addiction, that we're not giving them the kind of full attention that they require. And again, it's disingenuous, in my opinion, and offering false hope. So I'll let you know where that goes. Bill, I went and fought and debated against my own bill on the floor, because when they gutted the resource language in the bill, they replaced it with a sense of Congress. And there's a number of clauses in the bill that talk about the sense of Congress, that we see it as an epidemic, as we see it as in need of more assistance, blah, blah, blah. But it's empty, it's hollow. And I said so. And I said, with all this sense of Congress, let's turn that around and say if Congress had sense, we would fund this epidemic, because it's going to painfully destroy all of us. And has to be addressed with a degree of urgency. Hello there, Mayor. How are you? Good. How are you? Complement to that, by the way, that's HR 2981. Complement to that is HR 2646, which is the Comprehensive Mental Health Bill, which we have come to. By the way, 2981 passed the House unanimously, and now we're trying to bring the U.S. Senate version together to kind of get some resolve. With the Comprehensive Mental Health Bill, we've come up with a bill that does no harm, but it's just an initial step, in my opinion, a first step that needs to go much further. We offer suicide prevention programming. We offer additional mental health programming for young people, young adults and children. There are screenings made available, additional work done on research, but a lot of effort has to be made in several ways to make affordable the resources. But again, it does no harm. It's a helpful bill. And 2646, HR 2646, was recently brought to completion with bipartisan agreement in both Energy and Commerce. And we'll go forward with, again, negotiating with the Senate to see where we can come to agreement so as to get a bill onto the desk of the president. Those are some major bits of legislation that we're working on. Now, some of the other bits of unfinished business that I'll quickly go through. The Zika virus. The science community is suggesting that the Zika virus carried by the mosquito population is coming as far north as New York City. But we have no idea what those elements are going to produce this year and how far that virus will travel. The southern states are severely impacted. Puerto Rico, tremendously impacted. There needs to be dollars, serious dollars. The president is calling for 1.9 billion. We're again playing games with that. We're robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're taking money from the Ebola crisis, which still exists, taking that funding and making it somewhat fungible, taking money from community emergency services aid with the disasters that have impacted communities. Again, that aid is somewhat delayed as it is. So we're compounding the damage with that one. All to kind of do this smoke and mirrors approach with Zika. Now, imagine if you're going to develop a virus. Now I know that at least one reported case in the news in New Jersey had a little girl born in New Jersey who is impacted by that Zika virus. And the estimate by the health community is that those individuals will cost $10 million per child in their lifetime. The disabilities are severe. Just painful consequences for couples. Many couples have been advised by their doctors to not start a family in some of the regions that are severely impacted. So imagine getting a vaccine developed. It takes time and it takes a lot of work and money. And again, if we're just funding something to September by taking money away from Ebola and from the emergency services to communities, we're again playing a shell game, and it's not real. So the research is going to cost money, and the population control, which should assist local governments in addressing the mosquito population, is a real price tag, and it doesn't end in September for a lot of communities. So we'll keep you posted on that, but a tough thing. With job growth, I think a lot of the work that we need to do is emphasizing Made in America. We have a Made in America component with the water bill that I talked about, making certain that a lot of the infrastructure that will be placed is produced in America, incentives that are provided for those industries, investing in startups and makerspace for a lot of communities, incorporating that into a package that we're advancing, along with entrepreneur and innovator startup monies, with tax incentives, I think are all very important. And the startup stage, where I think the federal government needs to be in sync with these businesses, to stay in constant dialogue so that we can encourage them with those startup prototype stages, being there as a partner, and again, expecting that they'll go forward and eventually produce in their mass production those products here in the States, which I think is a good way to look at things. But jobs, undeniably the number one issue. Providing the infrastructure so that commerce can grow and have certainty on how it ships its freight and how it builds its product are important. Energy costs, working within the Energy and Commerce Committee, making certain that we grow a more and more dependency on renewables. And the linchpin there is making certain that the advanced battery manufacturing is moved along as quickly as possible, because with the uncertainty, the unpredictability of natural or of renewable supplies, storage becomes that linchpin that makes it all happen. We could go through a lot of things, but let me just close with this, and any questions you have, I'll be happy to try and answer, and if not, get an answer for you. Let me close with this. I've worked with a lot of the communities in the 20th District, and I know that there have been some partnerships beginning with the county government, with our 2020 efforts, which we initiated when I first got into office with Saratoga County, when the 20th became the 20th. I didn't have Saratoga County other than Waterford in my first construct of the congressional seat. But as we gained everything from Malta, Saratoga Springs down through Clifton Park and Charlton and Half Moon and Mechanicville and all of those entities that came into play, we felt we had to sit down and meet with Saratoga on a number of issues that included Luther Forest, where the chip manufacturing facility is. There were dollars invested, but there wasn't a structure put into place. And so we met with the county government there, which is still a board of supervisors, met with them routinely and developed the Saratoga 2020 vision thing. And the result was to get some good partnership going. And with local government in our office, we were able to develop some investments in transportation studies, getting better grounding on the governance over in Luther Forest. And we found it proved very productive, and we continue to do that partnership. We've begun that effort with Montgomery County, but I would suggest that I think a good exercise would be to insert the county if we can, and if you would want to do this, I would love to work with you. But the Capital District Planning Commission deals with 4 counties. I think there are great opportunities if you're included in that effort. We can research what it takes if it's just an administrative determination. If it's legislative, we could work with the state legislators and see what's possible. But I am just suggesting to you, or indicating to you, that I would be very much willing to be involved with any discussions you want to have that would incorporate more concentration with that capital district focus, which I think opens up a lot of opportunities. And one would be, I think, CDTA too, working with their group, with their board. Now that you have a legislative format, have transitioned from a board of supervisors, it may be time to, again, revisit an opportunity where you can go forward and work in tandem with some of these entities, which then allows you to build in some really strong potential for assistance and for resources. And I think it's worth a deeper discussion, a fuller discussion, and again, would love to add that to the agenda for Montgomery 2020, if you so choose. So with that, I've rambled on for quite a while, but if you have any comments or questions, I'd love to hear.
Thank you, Congressman.
I should say the legislator who just.
This reference to being included in the capital district with respect to some planning is certainly of interest to us. It's a little bit difficult for Montgomery County because of where we're situated. And for instance, like the state DOT, we're part of the Utica region, Region 2. And we seem to be in a geographic position that doesn't really help us, going west or east. So I think that might be a good way to. And I think in this part of the eastern part of the county, our orientation is to the east, but in the western part it is to the west. And then there are those departments that, like I just mentioned, are separate. How can we get started to?
I think just sitting down and discussing it with. I would be willing to reach out to the Capital District group and engage in discussions and then bring us all to the same table. You're very right, though, about what our situation is now, and I think this would be a way to maybe bridge that gap. When I was in the Assembly, it was very frustrating to represent districts in the capital region transportation sector and in the Utica region, and either region had us at the perimeters of their given zone. And nothing became more apparent in that sense than the exit 26 bridge. And it took a lot of work to get everybody to recognize that we're right on the cusp of those two the divide. And it took extra work, but we know the result. We have a bridge that is greatly used, and I think has opened up western Schenectady and eastern Montgomery, if not all of Montgomery, with more potential. So if you so decide, let us know, and we'll try to formalize that effort. And again, I'm not even certain if it would take legislation. It might just be an administrative call. which would be, I think, a strength for a county that continues to, again, but even with that innovation growth that I talked about with clean energy, green collar jobs, if we're put into that bastion of capital region, I think it helps because the nucleus of some of that activity is just miles away. But once we're formally attached, I think it becomes a more profound definition for us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Anyone? Okay, let me just close by saying I know that mandates are a big issue too, and I will continue to fight to end our sequestration concept, which was a 10-year-long commitment, part of the Budget Control Act of 2011, which I voted against simply because of the concept of sequestration. And it's painful to counties. I mean, sequestration is across-the-board cut, pell-mell, across-the-board cut without any sort of sophisticated budgeting. And I know the results are something like 16,000 children cut short in one state for full-time, year-round Head Start. 115,000 people estimated in this budget to be cut short for job training opportunities, skills development. Unacceptable, I think, in an area where, look, we can work to produce an environment for private sector job growth, but if you don't have the skill sets, Dusty can reinforce this, having the people work ready is important. And so those cuts to training programs are significant. Losing an immense amount of dollars for Title I for the most impoverished school systems. And I know Title I is a very lucrative stream of revenue for our local schools. They're impacted, as is the Office for Aging and the Meals on Wheels program. And with a high concentration of seniors in the county, sequestration is a painful outcome. So I just pledge to you, we'll continue to work on that. And, work with the governor and with my delegation in Congress from New York. We were leading efforts to get people to sign on for assistance from HHS in Washington. Because of the work done in New York, $8 billion of savings was produced, and we're able to bring that back for revenue sharing in the state of New York. And we fought for the CHIPS, or not CHIPS, but the Child Health Improvement Program, the CHIP program, the health program for children. Got that enhanced so that means more dollars for local health care for families and children in need. But the efforts go on, and we need to work on that. One of my goals when I was in the Assembly, I used to network with federal representatives about IDEA, the disabled children, the special needs education. The feds are supposed to do 20%. On average, it's usually 16%. So I'm working with Chris Van Hollen, Congressman Van Hollen from Maryland, to have an IDEA full-scale bill passed so that we live up to our commitment of 40%, which assists all of the constituents that we represent, mutually represent. So, it's just the battle cry, just building those concerns into messaging, into dialogue, into constructive outcomes that I think builds the passion for the work we all do. So, thank you, and let's move forward. So, thank you for your leadership and for the time tonight.
Thank you, Congressman.
All days here.
Okay.